Gurleen. Gurleen?
Yeah.
Yes. Gurleen.
So ladies and gentlemen, debate has transpired, or a majority of it has, and I feel like three major things have really stuck out. The question of choice, the question of equality, and the question of morality. Now, first let's address the question of choice. So, on side opposition, we're pro-choice. We're pro-choice for the artist to be able to make the decision of whether or not they distribute their music freely online. Now, the proposition has repeatedly said that the only way for music to become popular, an artist to become popular, is for them to freely distribute their music, which we agree. But there are platforms already open for that, which are called YouTube. But after people like your songs, after they've listened to them, how are you going to make any money if you're not allowed to sell your music online? If you're not popular enough yet to have a concert, but there's a couple of people who've heard your YouTube stuff and they want to buy your music. What does side proposition say to that? To that, they have no response. Now, the second thing that we've really seen come up is the fact that if an artist decides to give their music away for free, that's their personal decision, and this is what we're advocating for on the opposition side. The second thing, what we can see that this debate really comes down to, is the question of equality. Now, is it fair to the artist to force them to distribute their music freely? If an artist can't afford guitar strings, how are they going to make any music? If the people in the music industry don't have jobs anymore, is there really a music industry? To this also, the proposition had no response. So, on this contention, the argument also falls to the opposition, because the proposition suggests no way for the rest of the music industry to still function. They're suggesting ways for the artists to function, but it's an industry. It's not just one artist who's just releasing their songs repeatedly. Other people work in the industry too. And the last question we ask is a question of morality. Now, proposition repeatedly has asserted the fact that because it's popular to download music off the internet, there's nothing wrong with it. But just because it's popular to cyberbully, there's still something wrong with it. They're saying that because you're not hurting anyone by downloading music illegally, it's totally okay. But ladies and gentlemen, you are hurting someone. You're hurting the entire industry. You're hurting the artist who puts hours and hours of work into making their songs and doesn't get anything for it. So what we're saying is that it's still a crime. That stealing is still a crime. That it may not get as much notoriety in the media, but it's still a crime. And for this reason, this also falls on the side of the opposition. So what we can see is that in these ways, in the fact that choice, the argument of choice, the argument for the opposition to really allow the artists to decide how they should market their music and how they should be able to create an industry for themselves, falls on the side of the opposition. The fact of equality and the fact of an artist and the industry to be equal to any other industry and to have the same opportunities and face the same challenges on the same playing field as any other industry falls on the side of the opposition. And the fact is that morality, the fact that it's still a crime, the fact that it's inherently and morally wrong to do this, the fact that we should encourage people to buy music, to respect their artists, to respect art as a form of employment, as a form of beauty. This also falls on the side of the opposition. And for these reasons, the opposition is very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Go for his rebuttal.
In Proposition's Rebuttal today, we're going to examine this entire debate under three key themes that everything boils down to, and talk about what both sides have brought forward under this contention. So the three themes that we're going to be covering is money distribution, morality, and the right to intellectual property. So allow me to delve directly into the first theme of money distribution. Let's take a walk through the world of side opposition, where they would fantastically believe and place their hopes in the goodness of people and the goodness of corporations, which exist for the sole purpose of screwing other people over to make money. The first thing they did coming up here was criminalize us for not giving artists the freedom of choice. But ladies and gentlemen, they are inherently doing the same thing. They are coming up here and telling us that if an artist wants to get published, wants to make money, and wants to get famous, they need to sign with a record company and they need to publish on iTunes. Isn't that restricting their freedom more than allowing them to distribute their music freely if they want to? And they only go on tour once they're recognized. That's what they come up here and tell us, and then they're preaching at us for telling us that we're restricting freedom of choice. And on side proposition, we see that as a fundamental logical fallacy. Side opposition is preaching freedom of choice, but designating a certain path that all artists have to take. And we see this as inherently contradictory. And this moves me into my second theme of morality. And under this theme, we have to take a look at the fact that side opposition came up here and told us about a lot of examples. And that's very great, unless you're comparing the music industry to the underground cocaine or heroin industry or cyberbullying. An opposition's second speaker came up here and told us that artists who aren't legitimately published are all hobos with guitars sitting on the street begging for money. And we don't see this as something that's giving the artist credit, giving the artist the liability to choose what they do with their own music and their own creative property. So let's talk about morality, because the thing they said is don't steal money. And what we would say is don't let people steal money. Because I can't stress enough how devastating a generalization it is that telling us that artists need to sign with a company which is going directly to corporations is a logical fallacy. And we are creating piracy. Side opposition is creating piracy through legislating the fact that corporations have complete legal right to what they do with an artist's intellectual property. And we see that this is piracy on two fronts. Piracy of music from the consumers that would rather have access to this, and giving money to people who have more money than anybody else, even the artists. And this moves me into my final theme of intellectual property. And under this theme, we have to examine what this entire debate boils down to. And we see that opposition has been supporting our motion the entire time. They've come up here and their case line is don't steal music, don't steal money. But they're creating legislation and creating legal ramifications that enable corporations to take advantage of artists, to exploit artists, beyond anything that proposition would come up here and propose to you today. And we see that they've presented a very simplistic understanding of who makes the money in today's economic industry. An economic industry that is structured around corporations making more money and artists making less. So now I'd like to offer you a choice. I'd like to offer you the choice of siding with an opposition that comes up here and tells you that online music doesn't make money, for corporations, that it gives people the right to distribute their music, when the fact is that no one would buy something on iTunes without listening to it on YouTube first. And we see that everything starts with a public debut, and everything starts with freedom and with distribution before any money is involved, any corporations are involved, and we would like to keep it this way. So it is on these terms that we have the proposition proudly proposed before this House, and good luck with the rest of your night.